Night fell like a thick black blanket, covering everything along Old Highway 73, a forgotten stretch of road that once connected Texas and Louisiana. Back in the 1960s, it was a major route. Now, it's been replaced by sleek new highways, leaving only a handful of truckers, seasoned loners, and the occasional drifter daring enough to pass through. Because for decades, a rumor has haunted this road of a pale figure in white, standing alone in the dark, waiting for someone to stop. Jackson Miller, a veteran truck driver with over 20 years of long-haul experience across the U.S., had one golden rule: never stop where the lights don't reach. But tonight, something made him break that rule. At exactly 12:27 a.m., Jackson had just left a rest stop on the Louisiana border. Black clouds smothered the sky, and the wind howled through bare trees lining the road. Rain hung heavy in the air, ready to fall. His headlights cut through a thin mist as he drove deeper into the dark. And then, he saw her. A young woman stood on the roadside, dressed in a long white gown, her dark hair falling across her face. No umbrella, no luggage, just standing still, motionless, one arm slowly raised, as if she had been waiting there for a century. Jackson frowned and instinctively slowed down. Tires screeched lightly on the cracked pavement. He rolled down his window. "Miss, what are you doing out here this late? Where are you headed?" he called out. She didn't answer. She simply stepped toward the door, slowly, like the rain was dragging her down. As she neared the truck, her face became visible in the light, pale, cold, expressionless. Nothing terrifying, at least not yet. He opened the passenger door and motioned. "Hop in, I can take you to the next town." The girl didn't say a word. She climbed in silently, light as air, clutching a small black handbag. "No thank you." No sound. Jackson glanced at her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded faintly, eyes fixed straight ahead. He shrugged and turned his attention back to the road. A soft country song played from the radio. Rain began tapping gently on the windshield. They drove in silence for the next 15 miles. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Her eyes stared into the night, like she was waiting for something no one else could see. Jackson began to feel uneasy. The air inside the cab turned icy. His breath fogged the glass, though the heater was off. He turned to her again. "Where should I drop you off?" No reply. He glanced fully to the side. The seat beside him was empty. The girl had vanished. His heart froze, hands trembling on the wheel. He scanned the cabin. There was no sign anyone had ever been there. The seat was dry, no handbag, no water stains. He gasped. "That's impossible. She was right here." He looked into the rearview mirror. There, a white shape curled up on the backseat. Jackson screamed. The truck jerked off course. He slammed the brakes, the wheels skidding across the wet asphalt. When he turned around, nothing. The backseat was empty. No one there. He jumped out of the truck, shaking, the cold rain slapping his face like icy hands. He circled the truck, checking the doors. Everything was locked. No one had entered or exited. No footprints. Only darkness and silence. He climbed back into the cab, and just as he sat down, the radio crackled. A whisper emerged from the static. "Thank you for the ride?" But it wasn't from the radio. Jackson bolted from the truck, this time, truly terrified. On the inside of the passenger window was a small handprint, not pressed in water, but pressed from inside the glass. Jackson stood motionless in the rain, heart pounding like it might burst from his chest. The downpour continued to hammer down, but he no longer cared. His eyes remained fixed on the faint handprint pressed against the passenger side window. He stepped closer, trembling hand reaching to wipe it with the edge of his jacket, but the print didn't fade. It wasn't moisture. It wasn't dirt. It was imprinted within the glass itself, like something had left its mark from another world. Jackson stepped back, tilting his face up toward the starless sky. Distant thunder echoed across the dark. A chill crept down his spine, deep into his bones. Climbing back into the cab, he sat behind the wheel and turned the key. The engine roared to life, but so did the radio, crackling with an eerie static. No music, no voices, just breathing. He switched it off quickly, trying to stay calm. No way. I'm just tired, probably imagining things," he muttered. The truck rolled forward once more, but something felt different. The streetlights ahead flickered, then died completely. Darkness swallowed both sides of the road. The highway stretched out like a never-ending void. Jackson gripped the wheel, eyes locked forward. All he needed to do was reach the nearest gas station. Then he'd stop, call the police, or anyone who could explain what was happening. About 5 minutes later, he saw lights. A dim yellow sign emerged through the mist. Chet Stop, open 24/7. Jackson pulled in, parked quickly, and rushed inside. The air inside was warm and still, filled with the faint scent of old coffee and newspapers. Behind the counter stood a man in his 50s, wearing a worn button-down shirt and a trucker cap. He was flipping through a paperback novel. "Even in," the man said, his voice gravelly but friendly. "Not many folks take that stretch of highway anymore, especially this time of night." Jackson didn't answer right away. He stood still, eyes scanning the room as if trying to confirm it was real. "That road? Have you ever heard anything strange about it?" Jackson asked, voice still shaking. The man paused. He set down the book, stared at him. "You've seen her too, haven't you?" he said quietly. Jackson frowned. "Seen her? What do you mean?" The man slid a worn leather notebook across the counter. "Everyone who's stopped here after meeting her wrote something down. Inside were dozens of handwritten notes, all in different handwriting. I saw a girl in a white dress, but she vanished. The seat was empty. I swear someone had been sitting there. I looked in my rearview mirror and something was in the back. I saw a handprint on the window, like it came from the inside." Jackson flipped to the last page. The entry was dated 3 months ago. Trucker named Malcolm Hensley went missing after calling in about a girl hitchhiking. Police found his truck parked on the shoulder. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no driver. Jackson looked up. "And you? Have you seen her?" The man shook his head. "I don't drive that road, but I've been hearing the stories for nearly 20 years. Has anyone ever made it out?" A long silence. "A few, like you. They picked her up but bailed halfway through. None of them ever drove that road again." Jackson sank into a nearby chair. Cold sweat dripped down his temples. "You think she's real?" The man slid a worn photograph across the counter. It showed a young woman in a white dress, standing alone on a roadside. The image was blurry, but her eyes were clear, hollow, sorrowful, and pleading. She was real. Her name was Annabelle Riker. 19 years old. Disappeared in 1997 after a car accident. They never found her body. And ever since, the man said, voice dropping low, people started seeing her, standing alone on that highway. Jackson sat in stunned silence. What he just experienced wasn't a dream. "What are you gonna do now?" the man asked. Jackson clenched his fists. "I'm going back." The man stood abruptly. "No. Are you insane? If you go back." "No. I need to know for sure." He stared at the photo. At the girl's eyes. She never reached her destination. "Maybe I'm the one who's meant to take her there." Jackson sat silently behind the wheel, his hands gripping it unconsciously. The rain still fell lightly, its steady tapping on the windshield like a warning lullaby. The weak yellow glow from the rest stop behind him reflected faintly in his side mirror, like something trying to hold him back, but Jackson had made up his mind. She was once alive, and no one's ever brought her home. He repeated in his mind, as if reminding himself that he wasn't doing this out of curiosity, but because he needed answers. The truck rolled forward, slowly leaving the lot, turning back onto the old road. No cars came from the opposite direction. No lights from any nearby houses. Just darkness, misty rain, and the wet road stretching endlessly ahead. Jackson checked the clock. 1:17 a.m. He slowed down as he neared the section of road where he'd seen the girl. Everything looked exactly the same. Leaning trees, the rusted warning sign, and not a single sound beyond the tires gliding over damp asphalt. He pulled over and waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes passed. No one appeared. Jackson sighed. Maybe he'd imagined too much. Maybe fear had twisted his memory of the previous night. But then, a soft tapping came from the passenger side. He turned sharply. The door was closed. No one there. The knock came again, this time, from the rear window behind him. Slowly, he turned around. She was there. Her soaking hair clung to her pale face. Her white dress, stained with dirt and mud. Those dark eyes, deep as abysses, stared straight at him through the glass. For some reason, Jackson didn't scream, didn't shake, didn't flee. He simply opened the back door. She entered, as silently as a ghost. Sat still. Said nothing. Jackson placed his hands back on the wheel. "This time, I won't turn away," he whispered. The truck rolled forward again. Trees on both sides blurred into mist. The rearview mirror still reflected her, motionless. "Where do you want to go?" he asked. No response. But this time, instead of pointing vaguely like before, the girl tilted her head slightly to the left. Jackson glanced at the map pinned to the dashboard. If he turned left in 2 miles, it would lead to a narrow path toward an old residential area called Willow Creek, abandoned since 1995 after a flood and landslide. A thought struck him. Was that where she had lived? Or where she had died? He turned onto the dirt path, the truck jolting as it hit uneven ground. Overgrown trees on both sides nearly swallowed the road whole. After a few minutes, a small wooden house came into view, hidden behind a stand of pine. Rotting, partially collapsed roof, and boarded windows. The truck came to a stop. The girl in the backseat said nothing. He turned around. No one was there. This time, he didn't panic. He stepped out of the truck and walked toward the house. On the rotting doorframe, he saw faintly carved letters. Riker Family 1952. His chest tightened. The door creaked open at his touch. Inside was a dusty room, dimly lit by what little moonlight leaked through the roof. In the center stood a cracked old mirror, covered in a white cloth. Jackson stepped forward and lifted the cloth. The mirror reflected his image, and standing behind him, the girl. This time, she wasn't looking down. She stared directly into his eyes through the glass. A single tear traced down her cheek. Then, she smiled. Slowly, her reflection began to fade, and vanished. The mirror once again reflected only Jackson. He stepped outside and looked down the road. And for the first time, dawn began to break.